Jewish Bucha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother. Welcome back to my channel. It's Friday, so that means it's time for another Friday Reads, and I finished a bunch of stuff this week, so let's go. So the first book I finished this week was my last of the books that I read for the BookTube Prize this round, which was Our Bodies Are Battlefields by Christina, which is about the use of rape as a weapon of war, and I submitted my rankings already, but because the finals have not yet been announced, I think that's going to happen in the next day or two. I can't tell you my thoughts, but I have recorded them in the BookTube Prize blog that will go up pretty much as soon as Robert makes the announcement for the finals round, so that'll go up in the next 2 to 3 days. So I finished that. And then because I was still reading that, I also read another children's book, which was Louis Sachar's sequel to the Sideways Stories from Wayside School book, which is Wayside School is Falling Down. This is also a collection of 30 stories about the children who are in, or who learn on the 30th story of this building. And because we're already introduced to them in the first book, this is sort of the continuing adventures, and like a lot of stuff happens. There's a new student, somebody gets lost on the 19th story of the building, which is supposed to not exist, by the way. And yeah, like, school is overrun by cows. It was just like, it was wacky, and it was zany, and it was super cute, and again, nostalgic for me, because this was one of my favorites as a kid. So I was definitely glad to read this alongside Our Bodies Are Battlefields, which was very heavy. So this was light and joyful, and I liked it even more than the first book, so I gave it 4.5 stars. Definitely would recommend it as a children's book. It was very cute. I also finished Emma by Jane Austen in the past week. I did this as a buddy read with Kim at Middle of the Book March and Misa at Books and Sushi. I ended up giving Emma 3.5 stars. I liked it overall, but I felt like it dragged a lot in the middle. I felt like it could have been significantly shorter, and then there's a I'm gonna try not to give spoilers, but there's something that happens with Emma at the toward the end of the book that I felt like should have probably taken longer to develop and should have started developing sooner rather than so close to the end of the novel. And yeah, and I loved Emma as a character. I think a lot of people don't actually like her, but I thought she was super spunky and independent and critical thinking, even if she was also naive and snobby and sort of busybody in her meddling with things. Like, I liked her, and I liked seeing her sort of grow and learn over the course of the novel. But yeah, it definitely could have been shorter, and I did not like Mr. Knightley. He was condescending and patronizing, and I didn't like him. So for more thoughts about that, I'm just gonna link the recent video that Britta Bowler did called In Defense of Emma, which I watched and loved and pretty much totally agreed with, to be quite honest. So I will link that down below in case you haven't seen it. She does give spoilers for things that happen in the novel. So I'm glad to report that my first ever Jane Austen book that I read was successful, and I was very glad to read it with both Kim and Misa, because I feel like because it kind of dragged at points, it would have been a lot harder for me to get through it just by myself. So I'm glad I had the sort of accountability of reading it with 2 other people to get me through. So yeah, definitely interested to read more Jane Austen in the future. So I finished Emma. I then finished a play by David Henry Hwang called Yellowface. This was a book that I had read before in graduate, or it's a play rather, but it's a play I read before in graduate school, but that had been any number of years ago, probably at least 8, 9, maybe even 10 years ago. But I remember liking it when I originally read it, and then when I reread it, it definitely held up for me. I ended up giving it 4 stars. So this is a play in which a fictionalized version of the playwright himself, who's just referred to as DHH, basically sort of protests about whitening or like whiteface casting of a white actor named Jonathan Pryce in the play Miss Saigon. And then not long after that happens, DHH writes a play sort of satirizing that called Face Value, and he's looking to cast someone in the lead role, and he hears about this, you know, actor who did a, I don't know, community center production of some play that was supposed to involve an Asian character, right? And so that guy's name is Marcus Dahlman, and so he auditions him and thinks he's really good, and he casts him. But he's not really allowed to ask Marcus about his race, and he thinks that maybe Marcus is Eurasian, but then he finds out that actually Marcus is not Asian at all. He's just completely white. But then he can't fire him because it's like, it's not legal for you to fire someone just for being white. So while all of this is going on, his father, HYH, who has started this sort of successful bank, is being brought up on charges by the federal government of conspiring with the Chinese government, even though his father has been a loyal citizen of the United States for 40 or 50 years and loves America and would never betray his country. And so DHH is sort of grappling with his father being brought up on these charges, which clearly seem to be racially tinged and motivated, and stereotyping about Chinese people, while at the same time he's trying to save face for the fact that he's cast this guy who doesn't look Chinese or doesn't look Asian, and his name doesn't sound Asian in this play. It's supposed to be satirizing his, you know, the situation with Jonathan Pryce and Miss Saigon, but actually the lead actor is himself white, right? So so if all of that sounds like a lot going on, like, yeah, it's a lot going on, but it was all very funny, and humorous, and in some ways I think the character of Marcus sort of, almost predicts in a way, right? Like people who came after, like Rachel Dolezal and Jessica Krug, who were, you know, both of whom were sort of found out to be imposters of people of color, or pretending to be people of color when they really weren't. So I thought that was really interesting. So yeah, this was smart. It was very funny. And yeah, I definitely recommend it if you like contemporary drama, have an interest in plays that have to do with identity, or, you know, contemporary Asian American literature, things of that sort. So yeah, really good, 4 stars. And then I finally finished the book I've been working on all month, Louis Menand's The Free World, which was so good. 5 stars. I would give it more than 5 stars if that were a possible thing for me to do. So this was really excellent. It is a staggering scholarly achievement, truly. So Menand essentially traces a lineage of thinkers and artists during the Cold War period, primarily in the United States, in London and in Paris, although sometimes he refers to other parts of Europe as well, all of whom are really invested in this idea of freedom, and all of whom are trying to sort of deconstruct the foundations of whatever their particular field is, right? Whether it's linguistics, or dance, or music, or art, or film. They're trying to sort of turn the conventions on their head and to create something really new and original. And so, you know, we have figures in here who are as diverse as Merce Cunningham, John Cage, Hannah Arendt, Jean Paul Sartre, Richard Wright, James Baldwin, Simone de Beauvoir, Jackson Pollock, who else? There's a bunch. Like, I mean, there's no way I could, Andy Warhol. Like, there's no way I could name everybody who's mentioned in this book, because the cast of people who appear in this book is also staggering. So, but that is sort of the through line of the entire work. And the interesting thing is that by the end of the book, Menand sort of argues that during the war in Vietnam, we suddenly start taking freedom for granted. And so the same people who, not necessarily all the people I just mentioned, but, you know, the same people who would sort of think of themselves as like being in the avant-garde and things like that, actually, because we've taken things like the avant-garde and we've taken freedom for granted, they actually become sort of part of the system, if you will, that they were thinking that they were subverting the whole time. So I found that really interesting. This gave me so much food for thought. There are a ton of writers in here whose work I wanna now explore further, especially including Isaiah Berlin and Hannah Arendt. I didn't love all of the chapters equally, just because some of them I just personally found more interesting and engaging than others. For example, there was a quite long chapter on the professionalization of English departments that I found fascinating, because, like, obviously I work in English, right? But I think if, you might not find all that stuff about literary theory and professionalization of English departments quite as fascinating as I did, but maybe you would, I don't know. But I found the whole book very engagingly written. It's excellently researched, and yeah, even though there's a lot going on, I think there was, to me anyway, a clear through line with all of these figures who are discussed. I have to say, I don't think this book is quite as tightly focused as Menand's earlier book, The Metaphysical Club, and so I think for that reason I would say The Metaphysical Club is slightly better than this, but this just gave me so much food for thought that I don't even care, right? Like, 5 stars, would give it more than that if it was possible to do. And yeah, I would definitely recommend it if you like intellectual histories, if you like grappling with big picture ideas like what is freedom, what is the avant-garde, and if you have an interest especially in Cold War art or thought. So even though it was a time investment, I did finish it within the month, so, and that was just by reading like 25 to 30 pages a day, so it can be done. So yes, The Free World, absolutely excellent, 5 stars, would highly recommend. Okay, and then the last book that I finished this past week was a short memoir by an Israeli writer called Etgar Keret, who is actually the favorite writer of a contemporary Jewish American writer who I really enjoy, Nathan Englander, so I've wanted to check out Etgar Keret's work for a while now. So I read Etgar Keret's memoir called The 7 Good Years, and that title refers to the 7 years between the birth of his son and the death of his father. That is not a spoiler, it literally says that in the summary blurb. And so it's written in sort of like vignette style. So we get vignettes from year 1 and then year 2 all the way up to year 7 so in year 1 the son is born, right? And then in year 7 the father dies, because that's what you already knew was gonna happen. So, but yeah, I really liked this. It was a quick read. I found it quite compelling. I liked Keret's writing style. It's very punchy and humorous, but also with interesting insights and observations about things. It definitely has a very Israeli sensibility to it, because there's a lot of like dark humor in it. And yeah, it was really good. And probably one of my favorite things that he said in the whole memoir was he gave a description of humidity that is so good. It's the best description of humidity I've ever read anywhere in my life, and it was, the air was so damp you could actually drink it with a straw. And that is exactly what humidity is like, especially in the South. So yeah, I really liked that one. 4 stars, would recommend if you like, not necessarily if you like memoir, because I don't know that it's structured like a typical memoir, but if you get on with that sort of vignette style writing, and if you like more sort of humorous reflections on life, possibly with sort of dark humor bent to them, or contemporary Israeli writers or anything of that sort. So that is everything I finished. So I'm still reading The Travelers by Regina Porter. I'm about 40% of the way through this. This will continue into August. I am very close to the end of John Updike's Pigeon, Feathers, and Other Stories. I only have 2 stories left, so I will finish this either today or tomorrow, and we'll talk about it when I do my wrap-up and rankings for the month of July. And then I'm also still reading The Essential Writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. So that is everything that I either finished this week or I'm currently reading. Also, I should mention, number 1, thank you to everyone who complimented my new haircut in my last video. I did not expect that many compliments, but that was very nice, so thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is, in my last video I said that I was going to go back to Athens in the next few days, but what I meant was I was going to go back to Athens, Georgia, which is where I live and work, because I've been at my parents' house this whole summer, and I think, so I should have clarified that for my international viewers who probably thought that I meant Athens, Greece, because that is clearly the more famous of the 2 Athens, but I'm going back to Athens, Georgia, so probably the next time you see a video from, well, not if it's the BookTube prize vlog, but the next time after that you see a video from me, I'll be in my regular filming location back in Athens, Georgia. So thank you for watching this. Let me know if you have thoughts about any of the books that I mentioned here. Let me know what you read and really liked in the month of July. Yeah, I hope everyone is staying healthy and well. I hope you're doing good reading whatever you're reading, and until next time, would it kill you to call your mother?